Hey guys, welcome back to Reader's Corner, where we love to feature essays, blogs, articles, research papers, and in this case today, interviews with people out there talking about the themes and the topics that we love to talk about in this channel, which is very wide ranging, right? We love to talk about philosophy, industry, finance, features, artistry, craftsmanship, etc. Things that, are definitely on my mind, but are I feel are on the mind of a lot of people out there. So hopefully it's resonant with a lot of people out there. Today we're going to talk about an article from King Willonius, which he was featured on Wired earlier this year. It's an older article. It's something I've been wanting to feature for a long time and going deeper into the reading of it. And I think it brings up a provocative idea. Now, King Willonius, he is a friend of mine. He is awesome. And you can check out his profile at King Willonius on Instagram and on Twitter. He's also Avocado Poppy, hilariously. He created BBL Drizzy, which we featured elsewhere. He's also a comedian. He's also done a lot in AI, especially experimenting with music videos, short films, etc. And he's been featured by the likes of Will Smith and Cat Williams, etc. with his work. I highly recommend just checking it out. Like, a lot of his themes revolve around, Black culture, Black thought, Black excellence, and history, etc., where he's kind of rewriting what is featured in these stories, right? Like, how do we rewrite these stories? They're really cool. He does most of the visuals himself, and it's amazing. And he just did a musical recently, which was the BBL Drizzy music Cole. And he was also, of course, featured in Time Magazine as well, which is super awesome. So he's one of the Time 100 AI people. Anyway, that's Willonius. He's really cool. They just did, as you can see, BBL Drizzy here, the musical. They were featured at the Museum of Science over there at Art Basel. So super cool. That's BBL Drizzy. But let's jump into the article, which is written by Jason Parham on The Wired on March 20th or 28th there, 2024. And the title is The Filmmaker Who Says AI is Reparations. Before he used AI tools to make his movies, Willonius Hatcher couldn't get noticed. Now his AI-generated shorts are going viral and Hollywood is calling. So, super provocative title right out the gate. And I agree with this sentiment to a certain extent. And I'm really curious, how does Willonius approach this, right? Because it's quite a statement to make, especially in an era in which people are saying, hey, AI is stealing from artists. It is taking from artists. How are we conceptualizing the idea that, hey, AI is actually reparations? So Willonius Hatcher was looking for a way in. He tried just about everything to break into Hollywood, and because there no longer exists a traditional entry point into its hallowed pantheon of performers, we can thank the internet for doing away with all notions of conventional success. The pursuit of it sometimes felt like a mirage. He could see it, and he knew he could get there because he believed in his talent. Only the closer he got, the farther the door seemed. He'd done the stand-up circuit, short film work, sketches, even video editing. None of them got him fully in the door. Then COVID-19 hit and everything changed. When the pandemic started, I was like, okay, all this is done. Let me focus on screenwriting. I can get a check. I can still be creative. Hatcher, 39, told me from his Palm Beach residence when we spoke by Zoom. He doubled down on script writing, constructing epic worlds of his own, joining writers' programs, and later creating a web series. By then, generative AI was taking off. So we're skipping over a lot here because actually Willonius also spent a lot of time on Clubhouse, which is where we met, and we were doing like audio dramas specifically. So maybe this was skipped over here because it's not super relevant to this, but I think it's a big part of his, creative journey and how we met, and we were both experimenting with audio dramas. I cast him in as a part of my audio drama, and then he also cast me a number of times in his audio dramas. So such a fun time and such a creative time to play around. Anyway, he doubled down on his script writing, constructing epic worlds of his own, joining writer program, and later creating a web series. By then, generative AI was taking off, and Hatcher, who was an early advocate of ChatGPT, became proficient in 2 specific programs. Although he relies on his writing, and string other together narration when making a video, Hatcher learned to generate AI images using prompts in Midjourney and to animate them via Runway. The trailers are really mini films. Here's Willonius here. This is not Willonius over here. This is him here. Look at that dapper guy with that nice green. That came from that period of incubation have slowly become legend among a devoted fan base eager for a new breed and look of Black imagination. Hatcher's work is resonating with audiences during a moment where many people in the filmmaking world have mixed feelings about generative AI's creative use in its most extreme iterations. Gen AI extends a grotesque American tradition, the deliberate devaluing of black life through distortion and theft. The unbound innovation of what Gen AI can produce is also one of its greatest dangers because of what it can unleash. Sorry for the ads. So it goes on to say, Hatcher isn't deterred by that concern. He wants to tell decidedly black stories, a point he stresses multiple times during our conversation, that peer into a cosmos of possibility. To do so, his trailers braid known pop culture references into radiant mashups. Jaquarius is standing on melodies in The Flute Man, and he constructs characters you won't soon forget, from Martin Luther Wick Jr. to the gaggle of creepy forest-dwelling Steve Harveys. The most striking of his AI shorts is The Lickback Renaissance, a two-part sci-fi noir that follows Zora, a young scientist who discovers a time-altering element as she undergoes a daring struggle for autonomy against interdimensional guardians and government forces. The videos each have over 1 million views on Instagram. So already I think this is super provocative that, he was able to kind of nail this particular category and be imaginative in it, and using AI to do so. Arguably stories that may not have been told before or might not easily have been funded. As you might expect, Hollywood changed its tune. Hatcher since partnered with the video distribution platform Code Black to release more content. Right now he's working on Hoop Fighters, a cyberpunk basketball world, and is churning out scripts. When we speak on the third Friday in March, he explains how AI helped to level the playing field for him. He's serious about black creators and creators of color in general not getting left behind in this next era of tech disruption from the machine wilderness of artificial intelligence. There are stories waiting to be told, and it would be a failure, Hatcher says, not to take advantage of the tools at hand. All right, so this is where the interview begins. So, visual animations aside, what originally struck me about your trailers were their strong sense of narrative. Gen AI is often an image-first medium, but you place just as much, if not more, emphasis on the storytelling aspect. Where does that come from? I started out making original audio dramas as part of the Clubhouse Creator Program in 2021. That's how I really got into sci-fi. I would take spec scripts that I had and combine different worlds. Imagine if Family Matters was set in Atlanta's universe. For that one, the premise was Darius goes to Chicago to meet with his cousin Steve, but he finds out that Steve is a crime lord. In my mind, Steve was essentially Rick from Rick and Morty. He had that level of genius. He wouldn't be this goofy kid. He'd be a mastermind. That was one of my favorites. During the program, I also pitched and worked on an all 11 episode black soap opera I created called The Young and the Thirsty, which I cameoed in. The stuff we were able to do creative with audio opened my mind. There was a natural transition from audio dramas to AI. They helped me to enhance storytelling and my ability to make these AI productions. All of this stretched me creatively. And again, I only did this all because I was trying to break into TV. I was right there, literally right there, and then the writer's strike happened. So first of all, I love this, that there's a nod here to Clubhouse. And if you don't know about Clubhouse, Clubhouse, there was a very large black community there, which was very, very dynamic, right? There was a lot of musical creation there. There was a lot of shows. There was things like The Lion King, which I participated in. There was the things that Willonius was doing. It was just a very dynamic era. And in a lot of ways, that pandemic audio innovation era, I think, kind of led and bled straight into AI in a lot of ways. It was like, and maybe you can add crypto in there as well, like NFT innovation, but it was just kind of like Clubhouse audio productions and audio innovation and shows, and then, NFTs and all that craziness. And then boom, here we are in AI, right? And this itself it resembles it in its dynamism, right? What changed for you? I had meetings lined up for different agencies, including Macro, one of the biggest. Then the strike started and they stopped taking meetings. At the time, I was a member of the Black Boy Rights Media TV Fellowship Program. We had a Slack group and people were in there talking bad about AI. By that point, I'd already been using ChatGPT and was obsessed with it. So I started making animations or films using Midjourney and Runway. I was using it so much that I was just like, let me see just what happens. They started getting attention and I went all in with it. For me, instead of making a pitch deck, I was like, I can make an AI trailer that shows people exactly what it is that I want to create. So just beautiful, honestly. I think this is the essence of the innovation of AI and how it's going to influence creativity, right? Like someone like Willonius is able to see what its potential is and to go for it. Your introduction to AI filmmaking coincides with the strike, and one point writers were arguing was for more ownership over their stories, AI represents the opposite of that. There's a lot of justifiable pushback on both sides. How do you negotiate that tension? Your urge to essentially create mini AI movies despite them not always being welcomed by your colleagues. He says, I find that once people start messing around with these tools, their stance totally flips. Maybe a month or two into the strike, I did a class with a bunch of my screenwriter friends showing them how to use these AI tools. We focused on ChatGPT to create pitch decks and treatments, you name it, and they were blown away. Once they figure out what AI could do, their tune changed. They would text me on the side, like, what prompts do I need to get this or that? There are a lot of creators that use AI in the low, but just won't say anything. They don't want to seem like they're not credible or not producing their own work, especially if you are a writer and people find out you're using AI. It's like a scarlet letter. Exactly. But for me, it's just a tool. It's a tool in the way that we use Google or Photoshop or After Effects. It just depends on how the person is using it. AI just enhances what you already bring to it. This is how I look at it. I'm going to be straight up honest. AI is our reparations. I'm going to use these tools to make whatever it is I can make, which will allow me to accelerate my career and move to a certain space. I got executives and all sorts of people reaching out to me now that never looked at me, and when I was just putting out content and making scripts. I had meetings set up before the strike and couldn't even get an email returned. Like, hey, look at what I've done on Clubhouse. Look at the millions of hits I got on YouTube. Look at the shows I've produced. I should be in a writer's room. You don't deserve anything in life, but my resume was long enough. I mean, so on one side, I definitely think that this is a strong sentiment. And he says here, AI's reparations, he's gonna use the tools to make whatever it is he can make, which will allow him to accelerate his career. Totally, and I totally get that. And at the same time, like, he was also lucky that BBL Drizzy hit, and all these things kind of snowballed as well. And the question is, like, can a person take that on and use AI in this moment of a lot of innovation or not, right? And I do think that it is going to create a new generation of AI artists. And Willonius, I think, is at the forefront of this. He says, you felt you had proved your worth. Using AI now, the conversations are different, and that's reparations. Still, I don't know what this ends up becoming because the tech is advancing so fast, it's getting scary. I used to be able to spot an AI image. Now I see images that are real, and I'm like, is that AI? So we're headed to a very interesting place. Agree. And I think, maybe this whole section here really warrants just, a really deeper dive. Like, what does it mean that, AI is potentially reparations? In the Black community, obviously, there's slavery and structural racism and a long, long history of racism and exploitation that even stretches before the founding of the American Republic or imperial. But like, I think in some ways it's interesting that when I access an AI, I can access a level of intelligence that I heretofore maybe I could via Google and a lot of work and figuring it out. But with an AI, I can get that level of intelligence right away in a conversational form, in a more immediate form that can explain it to me as well as like help me solve a problem. That's interesting because that training, etc., took so much work to be able to acquire for a regular human to get, right? Like a PhD in, let's say, physics or math or sociology or what have you takes a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades to acquire, where in the span of a few minutes, I could potentially acquire that maybe in the future or even in the near future or now even just by asking a question to the AI, and it can answer it to me and help me in a way that is very immediate. I don't need to go through all that schooling. I think that's what is unique here. And when we start to talk about how did someone get that kind of schooling or that kind of education, I think we start going down the rabbit hole of like what kind of privilege. If we look at SAT scores and who gets to spend the money and has the time and the privilege, et cetera, to be able to go get an SAT course before taking the SATs, all of that, that's a huge, huge issue. Whereas, hey, AI is going to say, hey, look, we can do your SATs. We can help you with your SATs right now without you having to go to class and you just pay $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 to be trained to get a great SAT score. So like, I think I'm only scratching the surface of what all that means. But I think, to me, that's what's very provocative about this idea of AI as reparations. And I do wonder, I made another post about, is AI, destroying talent and talented people? Because I think it takes you have to be born with a good voice and then train and have a skill and have that, honestly, that talent for hard work to be able to bring your voice to a certain state. And now, hey, look, with a few, prompts, I can create a song that is close to what I would have wanted to sing without having a good voice. And so how is AI disrupting the way that we have traditionally rewarded people and given people like economic benefit, et cetera, et cetera? So I think this is where that idea is really, really provocative to me. I'm curious what other people think about this. I mean, Willonius is really taking a stand out here and making a very provocative statement. So I'm very curious how others take it. He says it's an untapped market. With new technology, there's always a yin and yang. When Web 2.0 came about 10 to 15 years ago, nobody was making six figures as a social media manager. Now somebody can feed their family because of the strength of the internet. There will be advantages of like that with AI. Totally agree. On the opposite end, there will be people who lose jobs because of it. I think it goes both ways. And I genuinely think that more jobs are going to be created. The adoption rate is always slow in the beginning. People are justifiably skeptical as we turn the corner into a digital unknown, myself included. I tell melanated people, jump on that. Learn how to use AI, because now with ChatGPT, when someone asks you for a business plan, you're like, bet, I can get that to you tonight. You can do all these things. Previously, you would have had to spend a lot of money to hire someone to do it. And that would have stopped you from moving forward because you don't know what next steps to take. So that's why I say it's like reparations. It puts us on an equal level. I love that. And I get his sentiment of encouraging people, because I think a lot of people who are not are kind of shooting themselves in the foot. Your films exclusively revolve around Black characters and stories, but not everyone approaches AI with the same care you do. What do you say to the criticisms that suggest AI is bringing about a new form of digital minstrelsy? That's kind of what I was talking about earlier, how there's a yin and yang to all of this. I don't know why they spelled yin wrong. There are always going to be bad actors who take these tools and do negative things. It's easy to clone a voice. You only need 5 seconds. The same way people try to scam on Twitter or Instagram or jump into your DMs trying to sell you crypto using a fake profile, that exists and will always exist, agree. With any new technology that comes out, you're always going to have that potential threat there. Education around AI is so important because we are not only headed that way, we are in the revolution right now. Whether we want to be aware of it or not, it's happening. Within our communities, we are not having a lot of conversations about it, but everybody else is. I did the MIT AI filmmaking hackathon and it was 90% Asian. Woo, Asian. I think there was one other Black dude and a handful of white people. Every other community knows the value of AI and they're using it, whether they're talking about it or not. We just seem hesitant to jump into these conversations. That's so interesting. And I do wonder if AI music videos in particular, and the rise in AI in hip hop, Drake's using AI, Metro Boomin, BBL Drizzy, and more. I wonder if, Kanye, Snoop Dogg, I wonder if the approach of these major figures in hip hop are going to create a tipping point. Is your hope to change the perception of how Black people engage with AI? All my media I make is Black, but especially when I make the AI films. I purposely make a point to imagine new worlds. There's nothing wrong with Tyler Perry, no shade to him, but I want us to get excited when we saw, I think because Tyler Perry decided to stop making films for a second because of the AI stuff, or made a stand on it, but or what if Jordan Peele makes, there is a feeling of we've been waiting for images, movies, and narratives like this. So I think I get such a good response, and so many people DM me because other people want to create stories like this. To make a film using the traditional Hollywood methods is too difficult. Now there are tools that allow us to. I think we're going to get to the point where we can make our own Star Wars movies for a fraction of the cost. It's exciting because now we can tell our own stories or partner with people to tell bigger stories. I think this is super, super key. I think this is to me is the core of why I truly believe in AI and why I'm so excited about it. People are going to use it to tell stories that usually people didn't get to tell for cheaper, because the barrier has been the gatekeepers and the money, right? That was my entry point into your work. The lick back renaissance is a world that deserves to be explored. On the flip side, you mentioned how films can now be made for a fraction of the cost because of AI. What's your response to people who say that thinking is antithetical to the industry's survival and the people who make it work? I can't speak on the industry too much because I'm not in it, and I never got a check from the industry. But that was part of the reasons I went hard with AI. The WGA, the Writers Guild, sent out a notice saying, if you do anything, you're going to get blackballed. I said, let me count on all the checks I got from the WGA, and it was 0. They've never done anything for me, so I had nothing to lose. I'm pro-human, first and foremost, but I also recognized that we do have these tools available, and it would behoove you to use them. I've never heard Willonius use the word behoove in my presence. I love it. Behoove, man. The costs are going to come down anyway as tech becomes more available. The same way you see what happened in the music industries. To record a song 20 years ago, you needed a big budget. And now you got 14-year-olds making hits in their mom's basement. I mean, I love this sentiment, and it's so true. And I do wonder genuinely, like, where is WGA going to be in a year or two when these things, it's just going to exponentially grow, right? And so where does the WGA and other, unions, where do they stand as this evolves and more people embrace using it on one side? And also, like, I think that, and he's not quite mentioning here, but I think that the Hollywood industry, it has been disrupted by streaming in particular, and maybe in some ways deserves to be disrupted in other ways, right? If we are looking at the gatekeeping of Harvey Weinstein and other things like that, that certainly needs to die. But then there's also that aspect of Hollywood that is good and has worked for 100 years, where the system of producers and studios and all of that has worked for a reason, and maybe it should be preserved. But also, how many people in the world can tell stories, but should tell stories and ought to tell stories, but can't because they can't fly to LA. They can't, have the time to go through a training process that goes all the way up into the WGA. Like, that whole system works for a reason, but it's also very hard to get into. And yes, there's a reason why it's hard to get into, and there's a reason why it produces so well. But at the same time, you have a sequel mania universe. You have this world where people are just remixing slop all the time, right? And so, like, from reality TV shows to the C-level shows that are out there on a daily basis, like, don't you think that all of those things need to get leveled up, or have an opportunity to get leveled up? Not just the prestige dramas that, from Shogun to Game of Thrones to Breaking Bad, like, those are all amazing cultural artifacts that I think will stand the test of time. But also, everything that isn't that, doesn't it deserve a chance to level up? And isn't AI able to help that happen? And so I think there is something here that Hollywood is resistant to, because Hollywood is thinking about the prestige drama stuff and big Hollywood money and all of that. But at the same time, there is a million, if not a billion more stories that should be told. And there needs to be space for that somehow. And yes, figuring out distribution and monetization, all of that is a part of that. But I think as these things get cheaper, maybe that will get solved. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, we'll revisit this over the course of time. Anyway, on TikTok, so it all depends on the artist. The great artists of the day are going to find a way to rise to the top and make it work. I agree. Being Black in an American context, we've always had to adapt to survive. It's about not getting left behind in this next tech revolution. Totally agree. A lot of the time, we are the ones who get the short end of the stick. We have to learn as much as we can about AI so we can be on some sort of level playing field. Like, I'm not developing Midjourney software. I don't know people who work there. And then if they say no more Midjourney for you, what do? I mean, I'm going to go figure it out. But if we can learn these tools and start to build our own tools, then we're really cooking. Now, I think that's a great ending point. There's obviously going to be a lot of comments here, but I think this is a great ending point, which is that, especially Black folks, other marginalized folks should be building the tools as well. So not just using the tools to create art, but definitely, even as Willonius mentions up here, like, they're not embracing it enough, right? At this MIT hackathon and maybe other events, he's seeing only a handful of Black folks. But at the same time, like, Willonius, Hatcher, Dave Clark, Don Allen Stevenson, and then we are seeing the big artists like Snoop Dogg, Kanye West. There are Black folks who are now embracing AI in a big way. And so I could see how that would flip in the very dynamic, creative Black community, and kind of treat it as Willonius is treating it. I think this is kind of a really cool way for him to approach it. I hope that this article has gotten a lot of, play in his community as well as other communities who are trying to understand how to approach AI and what it actually solves. And I think Willonius's approach underlines a lot of the big dilemmas and reasons why AI is just such an important disruptive medium for creativity. So I hope that's interesting for you. I certainly loved that article. Love Willonius. He's amazing. Shout out to Willonius. And More coming soon. Let me know what you want me to read and commentate on. I particularly love this article. Give it another read if you can. And yeah, hit up Willonius because he is awesome. He's just creating so much. He's just an amazing, amazing artist. And yeah, talk to you soon.